win up a check, I might do it again. Enemies close, have me thinking they're friends. 10 toes down, I'll be free until the end. Crib outside the city, I don't feel safe in my hands. Took so many years, I'm just waiting for the wins. I'm in debt to no one but the one who took my sins. I do it for real, there's no reason to pretend. If I do it once, I do it again. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, bankroll, euro, peso, add it up, I'm just doing me, everything is on me, oh you matter what. Add it up, told her if it's all me, everything is on me, gon' back it up. Matter what, told you I'ma do me, why you hating on me, it's not adding up. I do roll like a Mack truck, country heart, I might cop a farm and go act up. Lot of scars, I was cold-hearted, now I'm back up. Keep it real, I do this once a month, I don't rap much. I just take the money and go stack up.
Good evening, Julius. How you doing today?
I am excited. I'm wonderful. What up, Marie? Oh, I know what we're going to do tonight. We got a wonderful guest on, and as you know, every Friday we come before you here in live and in color. We are talking about Ain't to Ain't, Incarceration to Incorporation, where myself and Marie Jones, we give it to you real from OAA, Offender Alumni Association, where we do three things. And what are they, Marie?
We empower, encourage, and educate one another, because no one person can do it alone. It takes a village, and we are that village.
Exactly. And we are about changing the narrative. What narrative? There is a false narrative that's being purported that when men and women get out of incarceration or prison, they automatically go back. And what we want to do is we want to share with you on this platform that false narrative. We're changing it. Why? Because many of us, that's right, I said us, we are successful. We are successful educationally, occupationally, relationally, organizationally. We are successful, and we believe that as long as we continue to share these powerful stories, then we will change the narrative. That's what we're about doing here tonight. I'm telling you, Marie and myself, along with Julius Hall, we are so grateful for this platform, him, and also AJ. What they do is they allow us to know that we can make a difference in the lives of returning citizens, especially when we're able to bring some powerful stories on like tonight. Marie, what's up?
What's up? How you doing? We got a marvelous guest on. You have already in Miss Kiana. I am so intrigued, and so I'm so ready for her to go ahead and start speaking. She's an awesome speaker. I just love her. But I love the show is called Candid Conversation about our community, and I'm quite sure she's going to be a delight. I'm telling y'all, don't want to miss this show tonight. You don't want to miss it tonight. But I just want to thank Mr. Julius Hall and AB, who's the brainchild of Incarceration to Incorporate, for giving us the safe platform. So Kiana, how you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
Oh, it's a pleasure. It is a pleasure for you to be on. We want you to introduce yourself and introduce yourself and just tell us about yourself and what's your affiliation to incarceration.
Well, there's a lot that I could say, and honestly, I prefer not to, because I prefer for us to have as much time for robust conversation as we can. Suffice it to say that my name is Kiana Jones. I carry many titles. I am employed by New Georgia Project, which is a civic engagement and voter education organization. I also work with URGE, United for Reproductive and Gender Equity. I have many affiliations with social justice organizations and voter education organizations. And like I said, I carry a lot of titles. I do work in the community with families who have been impacted by police brutality specifically. I also operate my own business as an IEP advocate, a parent advocate, and homeschool curriculum creator. I'm also a German translator. And what I have to say is that to me, the titles that mean most to me are wife and mother. I am the wife of my amazing husband, Gerard Moore, and I am the mother to 5 unique, beautiful, and amazing children. So those are the ones that mean the most, because none of those other titles mean anything if I can't use them to help the people I care about.
True. Oh, that's so awesome.
I love it. I love that. I love what you say. Didn't I tell you she was awesome? I look at all the many types, but just one thing I love she said, if nothing else matters of her being a wife and a mother. Awesome. I want to come, Kiana, because I want to ask you just one question. I want to ask you about the word entitlement. Can you break down that word entitlement to me and what it means?
So entitlement is a feeling that something is owed. And it's not just a feeling that something is owed, it's the fact that you will act on that feeling that something is owed. So not only do you feel like something is owed, but you also feel like you should be exempt from penalty. So when a person feels entitled, they will act in a way that shows that they have no fear of prosecution or persecution, and that they deserve everything that they get, whether it's by ethical means or not.
Okay, you know what? I want you to, Julius. May I ask this question, Kiana? Can I ask the question how you, when you was on the panel?
Mm-hmm.
I wanted you to break it down to me how she was saying, are there any prevailing narratives? Can you talk about the entitlement on that aspect?
Oh,
Like, you know, how you
definitely.
broke it. Yes, can you do that
Definitely.
for
So
me?
we hear the word entitlement used a lot in politics these days, particularly by one prevailing party. So one of the two prevailing parties likes to spin a narrative that minorities feel entitled. And they call a lot of the services that we take advantage of to help us, a lot of social services, they deem as entitlements. But the thing that people have to understand is that Medicaid for all is not an entitlement. Universal health care is not an entitlement. Most of the people who are applying for social services have worked and worked and worked and paid into those systems only to be denied. When you talk about being entitled, white supremacy is something that's so ingrained in us, and we don't even
Mm-hmm.
realize how we have been conditioned to serve white supremacy from the time that we enter pre-K. Right? If we are a product of this society, we're conditioned to serve white supremacy. When you think about it, from the time that your child goes to pre-K, I know here in Metro Atlanta, we have police officers in schools. Where else do you go where there are police officers or law enforcement officers and you operate on a bell system? When you go to school, the bell rings, you start class. The bell rings, you go to lunch. The bell rings, you have recess. The bell rings, you go back to work. The bell rings, you go home.
Wow.
And there are police patrolling your halls, right? Where else does that
Yeah.
happen?
In
In jail.
prison. Yeah.
Absolutely. So from the time that our children are babies, they are conditioning, they are systematically institutionalizing our children because
Wow.
they want them to be already conditioned to operate in that environment. But when we talk about entitlements and the services that would actually make equity a reality, because there's a difference between equality and equity.
Mm-hmm.
Equality is giving everybody the same thing.
They
But
don't do
equity
that.
is giving everybody what they need to be successful. Because you can give me the same thing that you give someone who lives in Powder Springs, but what will I do with it if I don't have the resources and the proper tools to make it work for me and my family? So when we talk about entitlements, we are not talking about somebody just feeling like they're owed something in that case. Social services that are here to help level the playing field, only to a
Mm-hmm.
degree, because we know that they're only going to do it to a degree. But those social services are not entitlements, because my child deserves the same education. My family deserves the right to health care just like yours does. My family deserves to live in a neighborhood that is environmentally clean, safe, and protected from state sanctioned and interpersonal violence. So those things are not entitlements. When we talk about fair housing, that's not an entitlement. However, we have one party that loves to spin that narrative that we feel entitled because it makes them feel comfortable in the fact that they continue to withhold resources, that they continue to hoard resources, and that they continue to pass legislation that makes it legal to keep us oppressed.
You know what? Guess what? That brings me back when you say legislation, and I'm not throwing nothing at anyone, but I like what Miko said. He said that legislators care more about like the rules. They care more about they care more about the rules than the people.
Absolutely.
They care more about, no, excuse me. They care more about the law. They don't even, no, it's not even the laws. They don't care about the people, because if they can't be, the people voted them in, and they forget about the people once they get in, they do their own thing. Everything, I feel like this. I'm gonna just put it in my terms. I feel like everything is a lie until they get into the seat. That's what I feel. That's just my opinion. This is nothing got to do with Mr. Hall. This is just Marie's opinion, you know. And so when they get into the seats that we take and vote them into, everything changes. And I love when Miko says they forgot about the people.
Well, you know what, Marie, if I can add in just a moment, the word you were looking for was policy.
Policy, that's it.
But what I wanted to bring in, remember, we're talking about candid conversations about our community. I agree that that narrative that is out there that Ms. Kiana is talking about is true. But how do we in the community hold ourselves responsible? Because you use the word entitlement, but what about education? How do we educate, Kiana, our community to know that there needs to be a changing of the narrative? Because a lot of them don't even know that.
Absolutely. So it's like the old saying says, each one teach one. When you have information that is going to be useful to your community, it's up to each of us to find how we can best serve and engage our community. If I know, for instance, where I live, there is a police training facility that's being proposed. It's commonly called Cop City. I know that in my neighborhood, Cop City is a big point of contention. I know that that's something that I don't want for my community. I know that it's going to be dangerous for my community. I know that it's not going to really keep my children safe. I know that they brought it here simply because gentrification has made its way to my end of East Atlanta. So at this point, the information that I have, it's up to me to share it however I can, whether that's social media, whether that's talking with a neighbor, whether that's talking to parents at my children's school, whoever I come into contact with that can disseminate that information. Is up to all of us to be not only beacons of information, but also the bearers and sharers of that information, because information is nothing if we don't spread it. They say knowledge is power, but how much power can we have? One, if we don't know, and two, if we don't know what to do with what we know. So I would say sharing of information and following up with action steps. There should never be dissemination of information without an action step that's going to help you use that information to empower your community, because empowerment is not just telling you something. Empowerment is giving you the tools that you need to make life better for you and your families. So when I give you this information, I need to say, hey, Cop City is coming. This is not going to be good for us. You know what we can do? We can go to the city council meeting this Monday and we can give public comment. We can join this protest that's happening. We can go to this sit-in, which is also going to be a teach-in to help you understand how you can even spread the word. We can canvass our neighborhoods to keep the information going. There is a lot that we can do. It's up to us to make sure that information doesn't just come to us and lie dormant.
Wow. I like what you're saying. You have to educate the people.
Before you ask your next question, let me just read what Bernard said. Bernard said, keep grinding, y'all. I love this conversation. And then we got also, Oof Ellis says, good evening. Keep changing the narrative, people. And then one of our listeners says, unbrought, unbossed, and unafraid. Speak, sister. Go ahead, Marie.
I told you she's unafraid. I love her. I like that. But what you were saying, Kiana, is about educating the people. You can know something, but if you don't get out and teach the people and they don't have the information that is needed, then it does no good.
Absolutely. So information that we keep to ourselves is just like a light that we put under a bushel. The Bible says that you don't take a light and put it under a bushel, right?
No, you put it on top of
a light and you put it out so that it can shine. So when we have information when we have knowledge of something that's going to benefit our communities, our neighbors, the people who we love and care about, it really is incumbent upon us to make sure that we disseminate that information in the best way that we know how. For a lot of people, they are social media gurus. I can do a little something, but that may not be my strong suit. For me,
Right.
word of mouth works because I know that conversation rules the nation and we got to make every word count. So I make sure that I go and talk that talk, right? Because I can walk the walk. There's nothing that I say that I'm not willing to back up. So I talk to people. Other people will send out emails because they're good at writing, and they make sure that the information flows that way. Whatever it is that you do to make sure that you get the information out to the people and provide them with action steps. Hey, there are times when you get a piece of information and you might not know exactly what to do. That's when you have to use your human resources and call on those people who you know who are actively engaged in community. Each of us knows somebody who's active and engaged in community. If you don't know what to do with the information, call up somebody and say, hey, Brother Julius, I know that you go to those city council meetings and I know you're pretty involved with voting. This is what I was told, and I'm not quite sure how to move knowing this. What can I do? How can I help the community with this? Brother Julius is going to let you know. A, B, C, D, E, boom, boom, boom. And now we're going to hit it, quit it, and make it happen. You know, that's what we have to do to make sure that information doesn't lie dormant and that it benefits us when we get it.
Okay, so once we, like, say you have all that information, right, Julius? Julius give me all the information that I need, right? We go to city council, we talking to the people, and say things still don't change. Kiana, what do I do?
Well, one thing you got to know is that all change doesn't happen overnight. There are some things that are going to take years. When we look at the things that have happened in this country, especially for our people and the way we've had to change them, some things take months, some things take years, some things even take decades in order for us to change. But I believe that it's important to be strategic about what we do and how we do it. The first thing that we have to do is identify what a win means for us. What is a win for me? Regarding this issue or this situation, what does it mean for me to win this issue? It might not be policy change, but it might be something like, because of this, now I'm going to get a recreation center in my neighborhood. That could be the win. It's up to us to talk with our neighbors and understand, what do we need? What is it that we need? Because I can't come into your community and tell you what you need. I don't live there. I don't raise my children there. I don't shop there. I don't work there. So what would I know? So we have to identify first what our issue is. Second, what is going to change this for us? What would make it better? When we know what would make it better and what we want, then we can identify what a win is. And if we identify our win clearly, then we can begin to strategize, because it might not be about going to a city council meeting. It might simply be about the fact that we need to educate our community more. So we might have to start a neighborhood watch. We might have to start a different type of neighborhood organization. We might have to start weekly or bi-weekly meetings where we're educating the community about what civic engagement really is, about what our recourse is when we feel like we're not being served by those we've elected. We have to always build upon the things that we start out with. So you start out identifying what your issue is. Then identify what you need to make it better. Identify your win, and then you begin to strategize.
Hold up right there, Keisha. Kiana, I'm sorry. We got to go to commercial. But we'll be right back. What up? What up? This your boy Julius Campbell. I'm back with you. Ain't the Ain't Incarceration to Incorporation, and we are live with Kiana. I'm just glad that she's here. She's telling us about what we need to do. We're having candid conversations about our community, and she's going to explain a little more about entitlement and education. But before she does that, I want to hit you with something else, the narrative that we're talking about, changing it. I want you also to focus on incarceration. That is something that our community does not talk about when we have more people incarcerated than any other race, if you will. Why is that such a taboo conversation when it comes to that right there in our community? Can you help me to understand why we don't talk about that?
You know what, Brother Julius? I don't think that it's really taboo. I think that unfortunately we've been indoctrinated to the point that incarceration is acceptable for us because we feel like it's normal. You know, there are many of us who have relatives who've been incarcerated, relatives, neighbors, friends, loved ones, people close to us. Almost everyone we know knows someone who is justice impacted. And that's another part of the narrative. It's part of that systematic indoctrination that I talked about earlier, that in our community, it's not taboo in our community. It's just that we don't feel the need to highlight it because it is so common. We have gotten used to that being a part of our story. Back in the day, I don't think that our ancestors wanted to talk about that because for them, even though they knew it was possible, in their minds, they felt like, you know what, I can't bring this type of shame to my family.
Mhm.
But this day, in this age that we live in, first of all, there are so many of us who are wrongfully incarcerated. So it doesn't even matter if you've lived your life completely right, if you've walked the straight and narrow your whole life, we can still get caught up, unfortunately, because of this right here, because we Black. And when you Black, you automatically at a deficit in this country. When you're Black, you have to do everything you can to keep from being justice impacted, while our white counterparts live as if they don't even have to consider being justice impacted. And it goes back to that entitlement, right? That sense of entitlement. And when we think about it, think about how people even refer to our justice impacted loved ones. A lot of people like to say convicts, felons, ex-cons. That's not how we refer to our people. Our people are returning citizens because they are returning to the place where they came from before they were justice impacted.
Mhm.
Our people are entrepreneurs because they've chosen to come out of a bad situation and run their own businesses rather than working for other people who oppressed them in the first place.
Mhm.
Our people are justice impacted because unfortunately, they've been negatively impacted by the so-called criminal justice system. But I always say that that is the proper name for it because it is usually only the criminals who get justice.
I see
Like
that.
seriously, the criminals get justice. Look at Donald Trump. He's a criminal. And what is he doing walking free?
Mhm. See, I like
Think
that. I like
about
that.
this when we think about a narrative, right? White collar crime. What is white collar crime? And why do we call it white collar crime? White collar crimes are those financial crimes that are committed by people who are usually in prominent positions within Fortune 500 companies or organizations. And 9 times out of 10, those people are white. I'm going to say 99.9% of the time. So white people committing crime get to be called white collar criminals. First of all, the narrative of white, when we think about white, we think about pure, good, because everything that's Black is bad, right? That's what they teach us to believe. But white collar crime, it was just a little white collar crime. He just stole a little money. He just embezzled rather than saying he stole, but he embezzled, right? A Black person is a thief, but a white person is convicted of embezzlement. And even when they are convicted of those crimes, 9 times out of 10, they don't come with jail time. And when they have to repay, they're paying back less than 1% many times of what they have stolen.
So it sounds like to me that language matters, right?
Absolutely, it matters.
And
Absolutely.
I brought that in there. I see you. What's up, Tisha, my best friend, all the way from Las Vegas, joining us. Coco, I see you watching us as well. David, what's up, McGill Chill Will? And we're here with Kiana, and she's helping us to have candid conversations about our community. What I want to say, because language matters, that's one reason why we developed or created this platform for us to change the narrative, to tell our stories. Because if we can start telling our stories, especially those of us with black and brown skin, then people will begin to see us differently. But, you know, it really doesn't matter per se about how we are seen outside of our community if our own community does not choose to see us in a better light, especially when we have started all over again. I use this narrative. I say, I might have started out wrong, but look at me now. I'm finishing strong. And so I believe that that's why right here, we need to get people to tell their stories. Let people know that, yes, I once was wrong, but I am a little stronger. Now, what do you think about that, these stories and platforms that we have for our community?
I think it's really important for us to have these platforms where stories can be told, not only to educate the youth, but also to encourage the youth. Because there's a young person who's sitting in the same set of circumstances that some of our returning citizens were in when they felt like they had no hope. If they can hear our justice impacted neighbors tell them, look, I was right there, and I know that you feel like your only choice is to join that gang. I know your mother's struggling making bills. I know that you don't have a family support system. I know that sometimes you're so hungry you can't even think straight, and you feel like joining this gang is going to provide you the access that you need to money, to security, to help for your family. But I'm telling you, I went there, and let me tell you what it did for me. This is where it landed me. It landed me in a place where I did not even get the choice as to when I used the bathroom. It landed me in a place where I was told when I could eat, when I could sleep. And many times the food that I was given wasn't even food. And if it wasn't prepared properly. It was contaminated. It made people sick. There are a lot of stories that our returning citizens can share with young people to encourage them. I love the mission of OAA to empower, encourage, and educate. So it is up to us to give our community members the tools that they need to do what they can with the knowledge we give them to improve the circumstances for themselves and their families. And then once we have that knowledge, it's up to us to spread it throughout our community.
And I want to stay there, but I have to divert for just a moment. So remember that, language doesn't just mean, us telling our stories, but language also is important because our community does not know legislation. And legislators are supposed to be listening to our community. But when our community is ignorant of language and then they don't know what's going on with the legislation, policies now are coming out. Take over.
So what I want to talk about in legislation is coded language, because we get a lot of these bills that come forward in coded language. They're draped in it because it's deliberately deceptive, right? So when you think of something like, just say you heard that there was a bill that was being passed that was called the Parental Protection Act. That sounds like they're trying to protect the rights of parents.
Right.
But what if you opened that bill when you got your hands on it and you saw that what was really in that bill was saying that educators could not teach history the way it's actually happened? What if that was actually an anti-CRT bill and the only parents that would be protected are racist white parents? Those are the things that happen every day. And by the way, that was an actual bill that passed last session here in the Georgia legislature, the anti-CRT bill. It is titled a Parent Protection Act.
Okay.
Right? So it's coded to make you believe that it's protecting your rights as a parent. When you think about rights as a parent in education, you're thinking about, I have the right to inspect curriculum. I have the right to come to my child's school if there's an issue. You know, I have the right to do certain things and make decisions that impact my child's education. That's what you're thinking. But what it's actually saying is that educators are now bound to white supremacy. So when we think about coded language, think about things like black on black crime. Why don't we ever hear white on white crime? Why don't we ever hear Asian on Asian crime? Why don't we ever hear anything other than black on black crime? Because they are further pushing the narrative that black is bad. But in reality, crime is crime, right? Because studies show that crimes are committed equally within different racial and ethnic groups. Because usually, for the most part, black people live around black people. White people live around white people. Asian people live around Asian people. So if it's all Asian people in this neighborhood, who you think breaking in your car? Another Asian person. Let's be for real about it. But we never hear that when we talk about other peoples. We only hear that when we talk about black people.
So what you're saying is that we need to understand language. We need to understand what's going on around us, not just in our community, but also at the Capitol.
Absolutely. You guys, if I even let you in on the few things that have come down the pipeline in this week alone, it would blow your head open, because there are bills literally right now that are in hoppers in the Georgia legislature, bills that are related to increased police presence within our schools, bills that talk about teachers not being able to speak with children about sexuality, I'll say. And it's usually related to sex education and that type of thing. But because there is such an assault against children being able to self-identify, there is a bill right now that's going through the House that talks about teachers not having the right to speak with children about certain things. And that bill is another one of those that's titled something like parental rights in education or something to that effect. But again, you have that coded language. When you look at bills that pass and they talk about terrorism, read those bills and see what they describe as terrorism, because quite frankly, terrorism, according to these people, might be my black ass walking down the street outside of handcuffs, because this is something that they don't want to see.
So listen, I got to say this. So, you know, this old phrase that we've heard, ignorance is bliss. What do you think about that?
Oh, it absolutely is. Because as long as you remain ignorant, willfully ignorant, as some people do, as long as you remain ignorant, there is no expectation of accountability. People don't want to be accountable. People don't want to be held to certain standards. So ignorance is their comfort zone. Some people don't want to know. Some people love to say, I don't worry about that because my vote don't matter no way. And they keep it moving because that allows them to operate within their silo of me, my, for, and no more.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So listen then, how can I don't want to just talk about outside of our community. I want to talk about my people as well. For us, a lot of us are willfully ignorant about what's going on legislatively, but we're also willfully ignorant about what's going on in incarceration. Some of us, well, no, all of us have somebody somewhere in our family that has some form of incarceration or probation or some form of the justice nipping at our heel, if you will. So why don't we find out more information so that we can not just protect us, but also remember our brothers and sisters that's incarcerated? Let me help you understand, because I know that impacts a lot. Let me share this. A lot of people thought that when I came home, that I was just going to go on about my life. I did 26 years incarcerated. No, now it's time for you to get you a job, get you a family, forget about your past and move on. But I believe that that's the wrong thing to do. I got to remember my brothers and my sisters, because there are many other Julius Campbells that's on the inside. And when I say that, I mean men and women who have been rehabilitated, who have been transformed, whose minds are renewed, whose hearts have been changed, but they are not given the opportunity to come on the outside because of legislation or policies or whatever we might say. How can we here in our own community begin to start getting involved in this situation so that we can change narratives?
Well, that is definitely a lot to unpack. But what I'll begin by saying is that so many of us take the stance of the Apostle Paul at different points, right? So there are many of us who like to be the Paul who says, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind, I press toward the mark. But they forget that that same Paul had a thorn in his side to remind him that he was merely a man and that he was nothing without the Creator.
Mhm.
So they want to go ahead thinking that they can get to a pleasant future without remembering what happened in the past to impact them.
Mm.
There are so many people who think, oh, well, that happened. I'm going to just keep on going. Let me forget it. Oh, the Bible say forgive and forget. Let me forget. That doesn't mean erase it from your memory, because memory is a survival mechanism. Memory is what helps us remember that lard is greasy and fire is hot. Memory is what helps us not slip, okay, when the floor is greasy or wet. Memory is what helps us not stick our finger in an electrical socket to get electrocuted. So we need our memory. We need to remember from whence we came. We need to remember, first of all, that none of us has done this alone.
Right.
None of us can make it in this world alone. And but for the grace of God, there go I.
You want me to
So
preach?
while I may be looking at someone with the side eye because he or she is just returning into this society, I have to remember that it could have easily been me. It could have easily been one of my children. It could have easily been my aunt, my uncle, my neighbor. It could have easily been me. But many of us think that forgetting those things will bring us closer to acceptance in this society. You know, it's a lot of us who don't like being Black. It's a lot of us who don't like the connections to the roots that we have. There are a lot of us who are desperate to be as close to white as possible. So we go and move to Powder Springs. We put our children in whatever high school out there where they're going to be bullied and called all types of racist names because we want to have a certain status. Because we think that because we ignore it, we can erase where we came from. But that is not true. And it is certainly incumbent upon us not to forget our loved ones, our brothers and sisters who are behind those walls injustice impacted, because they are the ones who come back and contribute the most to our society.
Wow, I love that. We got to get ready to go on another commercial, but I want you to think about that response. What can we do to help remember those that are still behind the bars and those that are going to be returning citizens? We'll see you in a minute. What up? What up? This is your boy Julius Campbell, Incarceration to Incorporation. My guest, Kiana. And as we get ready to turn the corner and digress for just a moment, I asked you a question. What can we do practically to help remember those that are still behind the bars, who have changed their mindset, who have transformed their lives? What can we do to remember them? But also, what can we do to help our returning citizens have a smoother transition back into our communities?
So I think one of the most poignant things that we can do is actually become a watchdog for our loved ones and our community members who are still behind those bars, who are still incarcerated. Unfortunately, the conditions within the carceral system overall are not humane by and large. And lately, there has been an uptick, not only in violence behind those bars, but in reports of food contamination, in reports of improper plumbing systems, reports of no running water. The basic environment that they live in is not clean. And it might seem like something small, but if you could just pick up the phone and call the facility where your loved one is, call the facility where your neighbors are and say, hey, we've had 3 reports that there is no running water in cell block D, and this has been going on since Friday. If all of your neighbors call every day of the week, that's pressure. If we can begin to write, because there are some people who don't feel comfortable talking, but if we can write not only to the warden, but make sure that you copy your legislators. This is where your legislators come in, because there are some legislators underneath the Gold Dome in downtown Atlanta who care deeply about this carceral system and what it's been doing to our loved ones. Copy your legislators on every piece of information that you send via email. If you write a letter, handwrite it and mail it, make a copy of it and send it to a legislator as well. Because one thing that's been proven is that when these legislators start taking trips inside of our jails, inside of our prisons, things change. Even if it's for the day that they walk in there, and then the next thing you know, they might try to retaliate against who they think brought them there. But 9 times out of 10, they had no idea who sent them. So things are going to have to change because now they know the spotlight is on you. Those are some of the things that we can do to help our neighbors and community members who are still behind those bars. For those who are returning, the first thing we can do is love them. We can embrace them. We can make sure that they don't feel like they're coming to a place where they don't belong.
Yes.
Let them feel like they're coming home, not like they're coming to a place where they're a stranger. The main thing that they need at the time that they are released is encouragement. They need support. If you can connect them to any type of reentry services, if you know of housing that focus on reentry, if you know of any type of utility assistance programs that focus on reentry, then those things are helpful because it's a struggle for our justice impacted relatives and loved ones to get housing. It's a struggle many times for them to even find gainful employment. I spent 20 years in New Jersey, and one of the things that I was most proud of that they did in New Jersey was when they began to block the box. It was when they stopped asking unemployment applications if you had been convicted of a felony or not. Because the reality of it is that there are some people who have been convicted of multiple levels of crime, but they are competent people. They can work and do a job just as well as anyone else, if not better. Because many of our brothers and sisters get so much education and job training while they are behind bars. So when they return into this society that's already built to hold them down, it's even more of an uphill climb for them sometimes to find employment because of that one question, because it allows employers to discriminate against them more readily than they already would. So we can always love them. We can provide connection to reentry services. And then we can also provide opportunities for them to share. Opportunities for them to share their stories, to make sure that they can positively impact the communities where they're returning is probably one of the most valuable things that we can give, because that's a gift that keeps on giving because it impacts our youth.
Yes. Oh, thank you so much. And as she said, listen, if you got a story that you want to share, we want you to share on this platform so that we can change that false narrative. We are successful. So what I want you to do right now, Kiana, because I want to let you go ahead and get you some rest, but I want you to just right for a moment, I want you to encourage a few people. And what do I mean by that? We have a variety of categories that's represented tonight. We got those that are watching us or listening to us on radio and Jessup that are still incarcerated, those that are maybe inside prisons that we can send this to, but also there are those in the community who are relatives. We like to say that we have three types of people. We have returning citizens, we also have relatives of returning citizens, and then lastly, resources for returning citizens. I want you to, just for a moment, encourage whomever you choose to at this moment and let them know whatever words that may come to your heart, those that are still on the inside, for them to keep on keeping on. Those of them that have come home and they have found difficulty, you just give them a word for me.
Well, one thing I know is that people like to say what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And for a lot of people, they lean on that. But I like to say what doesn't kill you teaches you a lesson. And I just want to encourage those that are behind bars, learn that lesson. Take that lesson and internalize it and make the most of this lesson. Let this lesson be the lesson of your life that not only teaches you, but propels you to come out and teach others. Let this lesson be the one that not only shows you what you're made of, but let this be the lesson that shows society exactly who you are and what you can do. Let this be the lesson that closes the mouths of the naysayers. Let this be the lesson that makes people say, you know what? They're not all bad who come out of jail or who come out of prison. Let this be the lesson wherein you walk in a way that shows people that no matter how far down in the pit they get, they can always come out and they can always be successful. To those of us who are the loved ones of people who will be returning, let me encourage you that whether your loved one is still behind the wall or whether your loved one is home, don't stop loving. Don't stop caring. Don't stop supporting. Understand that sometimes it's hard when you're in a cage to feel like there's any sort of freedom. When you're in a cage, it's hard to believe that anybody really cares. So when they seem stubborn, when they seem hard, you just got to love the hell out of them, because it's only love that's going to soften that tough exterior. Be encouraged that it's your love that gives them the strength to go on. Be encouraged that, yes, you got a child came from behind the wall. So what? That's still your child.
Yes.
Be encouraged, whether it's your husband, your wife, your sister, your brother, whoever it is. So what? Just love them to the place that they need to get to go where they are going in life. Love them to the point where they're no longer embarrassed to tell their story. Love them to the point that they know that no matter what, they have a support system. Be encouraged that being behind a wall is not the end of your life. For many, it is only the beginning. Because for many of us, it's only when we go inside of that cocoon that we can emerge as a butterfly.
Oh, man. Thank you so much for joining us tonight, for just sharing your heart, sharing your passion, and definitely for encouraging those returning citizens, those relatives of returning citizens, and also for allowing us to know that we too can play a part in their transition. Listen, every Friday we come at you. We want to make sure that we provide this platform of encouragement. We want to make sure that we give you a safe space so that you can tell your story and help us to change the narrative. Ain't to ain't, what are we doing? We are showing people that we are successful. OAA, what are we doing? Encouraging, educating, and empowering. That's what we want to do. That's what we're going to continue to do. As I often say to you, listen, we may have started this thing out wrong, but look at us now. We are finishing strong. Thank you so much for joining us. We will see you again next Friday, if the Lord's will. Be blessed and good night.
Thank you so much for having me. Good night, everyone.
like this. I like this. I like this. I like this. I like this. Like this.